See here. Okay. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it is your boy Malik Washington back at it again with another episode of the BMB. Episode 3? Yeah, episode 3. How you all doing this fine day or evening wherever you all reside? I thank you for listening. Today has actually been a pretty good day. It's been a pretty good week, actually. Some good news, some exciting things happening on this end. I'm hoping things go well. I actually have applied for licensure to become a vintner. So I'm going to actually attempt to own my own winery here in the city of Chicago. So I'm hoping that that goes well. Uh, you know, hopefully I can get that and get that started. I've always, for the most part, outside of wanting to dig into IT and be an IT specialist and whatnot, I've also been working to be an entrepreneur in other grounds. But that's just a little tidbit of what's going on in my life, and it's just been an exciting time. It's been interesting times. It's been challenging times as well. But I believe this year is going to be also a year of success, and here's hoping that that will be the case. Uh, Most high willing, and if not, then I will just pivot and find another way until the creator said that that's the correct path that you should go. If that is the path that I'm choosing, all I do is go through life and have faith and hopes that whatever actions I'm taking, the results will yield what the answers shall be. And that's the way that I live my life. That's the way I believe that the creator guides many, if not all of us, that when we make certain decisions and he is in the forefront of everything that we do, for the most part, you will get the answer that you're looking for the more that you live your life, right? It's more to life than just praying and petitioning for your answers to come or for some random voice to just suddenly come from the heavens and speak to you about how your life should be. In fact, you have to keep going through life to figure out what that answer will be to your question. But more importantly, are you actively listening to that answer, even if it is an answer you won't necessarily agree with? And at the end of the day, every answer is for our learning. Every answer is for our understanding, whether if you want to accept, believe, like it or not, right? Today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to pivot from politics. Now, quite frankly, even based off that little monologue, it clearly wasn't even about politics to begin with. Just a little short snippet about what's going on in my life, but also giving a little speech, or you could even say rant, just about how life works, even with the spirit in the spiritual sense, or even whatever it is your belief is that you're not going to get everything you want out of life, even if you pray or petition for it. You'll get an answer, but will it be the answer that you're seeking? Who knows? But nonetheless, it's an answer. But you have to be willing to acknowledge it. You also have to be willing to accept it, even if it's not something that is to your benefit, right? That being said, we're going more into a spiritual topic. In my case, it's I am a follower and subscriber of the Holy Bible. I believe in both the Old and the New Testament. No, I am not a Christian. I am a non-denominational believer in the Creator, which is Yahweh. I also believe in the teachings of his son, Yeshua ben Yosef. If you don't know what ben Yosef means, it means son of Joseph, which is supposed to be the father of Yeshua in the physical realm, correct? So that being said, I follow the scriptures through and through. I've been following it since I was obviously a child. Well, I'm not going to say obviously. You guys don't know me for me to say that. But basically, I used to be Christian, but I had my reasons for why I got away from it. From a doctrinal perspective, a lot of Christian doctrine to me is not necessarily founded in what the scriptures are actually saying. There's much of what Christians say I do agree with. There is a foundational belief, however, I find to be erroneous. I don't necessarily agree with the perspective, especially with their understanding about how the law works. I'm sure some of my Christian friends who I've even spoke to, who maybe even listening to this video, know exactly what I'm talking about because I've had quite a few conversations with them in the past about this. And we have had our back and forths. I don't necessarily agree. They don't necessarily agree with me. But nonetheless, we have our stances, and particularly as men, moreover, men in the Most High, we have to follow the path of which we believe the Most High has set it for us. And if you believe that Christianity in the way is the way, I'm not going to stand in your way of what you stand for. But I do believe that so long as we foundationally stand for the mission that Yeshua has set for his people, the Hebrews first, and then unto the Gentiles, also what Yahweh has set for the world that Yeshua also followed through and through by via the concept of love, which is digested through the Ten Commandments. That is what I follow. That is what I believe in. That is what I believe in being consistent towards. And that is what I believe will help us get closer and closer to the Most High, despite our imperfections in this life and what we've done, and hopefully what most are attempting to repent for that claim that they believe in Him. This is the heart of my channel, the Bible. It is. Through everything that I do, even if I talk about politics, for those of you that have listened to me unto this point, you have always seen me and heard me give my political takes about what's going on with the world, what's happening with Joe Biden and Trump, what's happening with black people. I talk about other races too, but the reason why I ultimately jump into the conversations about blacks is because I myself am black, among other ethnicities as well. But this is the culture that I grew up with. These are the people I grew up around. The people I typically correct, for the most part, are black people. The people that I love first are black people. The family that I grew up and I was born in were black people. So naturally, I'm inclined to talk about the people I'm more so experienced with and I'm exposed to, right? Of course, I never take away from other races that if they want to listen to me and the words of wisdom I have to give for as young as I am, naturally come and listen. I'm never going to take that away from you. Wisdom has nothing to do with race. Sophia is for all, right? In the Greek sense. Sophia is for all who wish to listen. Sophia is for all who wish to hearken. If you want to listen to this and you think that it benefits you and there's something practical in it, please do. Take what I say, practice it. And if it's to your benefit, if it helps you to become a better man, if it helps you to become a better woman, if it helps you to better take care of your family, if it helps you to become more motivated to try to go out here in life and work hard and do the best that you can. Nobody's asking for you to be 100%, but give 100% effort in what you're doing if you love it. If you don't love it, pivot, go to something else until you find what you're looking for. That's my attitude about life, right? Never giving up, doing the best that you can, and you will have those days where you will give up. But at the end of the day, goal in mind is to always, if you have a higher power, particularly for those of you that are like me that believe in Yahweh, if Yahweh is your higher power, put him in the forefront of everything you do, and always ask yourself if the decision that you're making is for Yahweh's glory. Moreover, is it going to lead to the glory? Is it going to lead to showing him, uh, uh, showing yourself approved unto him, no matter what you do? And that's what ultimately matters, right? So this episode today, I want to tap into a passage in the Bible where I'm actually going to educate, perhaps on a particular passage we all know that we've read, and a lot of you have probably heard in your sermons when you're going to your churches on Sundays and things of that nature, right? Um, and as I said before, I'm non-denominational. I don't believe in denominations. I believe in exactly what the scriptures say. I believe in what's stated verbatim. It's to my understanding, a lot of people say, well, there's so many interpretations to the Bible, so how can we see what's the right one? My attitude about it from a biblical perspective is always go off of what people, the authors in the Bible, are exactly trying to tell you and stick to that basis. The most important thing, you guys have to learn to just take yourself away from your pastors, your leaders, your accountability partners. Go through the Bible, read it for yourself. Because a lot of times what happens is when you listen to what everyone else has to say about it, they're going to tell you from what they feel what the Bible is saying. Read it for yourself. Read the context. This is what's most important. Read the context of what you're looking at. Compare and contrast it to the doctrines that you hear in the church. Always challenge your pastors and everything that they say. And what I mean by that is I'm not saying get up and be rude and start yelling how they're wrong, you're wrong, and here's why. No, don't do that. That's not what I'm recommending. What I'm saying to you is if you are a person that is skeptical, you ask questions, you wonder what this means, what that means, Do not be afraid to go and search things for yourself. Look up what words mean in the Hebrew. Look up what they meant in the Greek. Don't be afraid to go back into the historicity of what happened during that time period. These things do matter when you're studying the Bible. Bible even mentioned a group known as the Bereans. The Bereans believed in going into the Bible and studying it or you could say like the law back then. They believed in going through the scriptures of old, from what the prophet said all the way unto the time of Yeshua, and they were studying it to the point to where they could get a better and more definitive understanding of what the prophets and everybody was trying to convey, so they can have a more sharper understanding of how to follow the scriptures. Trying to get a proper understanding of how to follow the scriptures and where they need to go in order to appease the Most High. Because the one thing that those of us who claim to be followers of it, we don't want to be hypocrites. We don't want our interpretations to be based off pompous attitudes, piety, which is like an overzealous nature where you feel like your religion matters more so than the intent of what you're doing, right? Focusing on the outward appearance of of holiness, but not necessarily circumcising your ways, circumcising what you're doing in order to show the Most High you're spiritually evolving for His sake, not for your own, not for the worship of other men and or women. This is about Him and Him only. And so when it comes to interpretations, you must find the answer which you seek for yourself. Your pastor cannot do that for you. Your leaders cannot do that for you. And there's nothing wrong with listening to what they have to say if they have something to say about it. They will give you an answer. And of course, be open to hear it. But at the same time, don't be quick to accept it. If you believe deep in your heart that that is not true, go back, research it, see if you come to the same conclusions. Make sure that they reference from the scriptures and ensure that based off of that, it's providing actual context to what they're looking for. Always look to learn the answer, not necessarily definitively know it right away. Because it's easy for a spiritual leader to sit there and tell you what they want to tell you because they're leaders of a church, because they have millions of dollars, or because they went to seminary school. First off, before there ever was a seminary school, the Bible has always been word of mouth. It has always been oral tradition. It has always been passed down. So it has a source. It has to come from somewhere. And no matter what a seminary teacher or what a spiritual leader or what the father of your church, if you're Catholic, or if the rabbi of your synagogue, you have to go off of what those people back then were trying to teach or dictate to their people, which were the Hebrews. Later on in the Beri Hadashah or the New Testament, they were preaching to both Gentile and Israelite alike, right? So the title of this video, after that short monologue and word of advice, title of this video is "He that has not sinned cast the first stone," right? So many of you probably already know what I'm talking about, right? Book of John, chapter 8, where Jesus goes to the Mount of Olives, and essentially he's confronted by other Pharisees. Let's also bear in mind, Yeshua himself is a Jew. He was under the house of, if I'm not mistaken, there's the house of Shammai. I think it's the house of Hillel that the Pharisees, yeah. So the Pharisees were a part of the house of Hillel, who was the leader of the Pharisees. And then there's the house of Shammai, who he was the leader of the Sadducees. The Sadducees were more traditionalists, so they followed the Bible. They believed in following the scriptures of the law verbatim. The Pharisees were actually masters of interpretation of the law, right? So their points of view about the law was a bit more, you could say, in the sense of the word, liberal, right? They did follow the law. They believed in the law, but there were certain things about the law that were complex. And so in order to better sharpen the understanding of their people, of the Israelites, the Pharisees were there to help guide or instruct people on how to follow the law properly. However, Yeshua, who is a master teacher or master, which is what rabbi means, teacher or master. Um, Yeshua is also one of those people. He was a Pharisee. But Yeshua came in a different light because he was a Hamashiach, or he was a Messiah or anointed one. He was the one who was supposed to come, and he was supposed to be the new sacrifice outside of the old way practice of sacrificing, which was through animal sacrificial. Sacrificial animal sacrifice. Good grief. I don't know why I have such a hard time with that. Yes. So he was the newer version of it, right? He's an imitation of what happened back then. The oblation system got, of course, rid of. Israel was taken over by the Romans. And I believe that Judea was occupied at the time by the Romans themselves. That being said, a lot of things in their jurisdiction on how they went about executing their laws, if you will, definitely changed over time. This is also at the time when around the time this time I believe the Talmud was established. It was established back when they were taken over by the Babylonians, and then over time the Talmud became more complex and legislative over time. This was the very essence of what made the Jews, in difference and nuance to everyone else. I know that was a lot to take in, but that's just a little background as to who Yeshua was and what he was dealing with. So you're dealing with this complex, legalistic binding of laws that were set in order for these people to follow and make sure they didn't disobey. Otherwise, it would be going against what the Most High deemed for them, right? So they believed. But Yeshua had to kind of digest it a little bit better, right? He followed everything. That's why he was deemed perfect. However, the Pharisees had it all wrong to begin with. And we'll get into that in another topic. But ultimately, I want to focus on this passage. Because when he was at Mount Olives, he was confronted by the Pharisees, and the Pharisees brought before the community, for the gates, they brought before a woman who supposedly had committed adultery. And so they dragged her and threw her on the ground, and they said, Rabbi, we have a woman here who has committed adultery. Now, according to the law of Moses, according to the law of Moses, anyone who is found guilty of this particular sin, along with others, of course, but she committed adultery in this case, she is to be put to death. So what say you? What are you going to do about it? In other words, he then kind of, I guess you could say, squats on the ground. He writes something. The Bible doesn't say specifically what he wrote. Perhaps he wrote the law. I don't know. But we can speculate. That's open. That in and of itself is open to interpretation because it's so broad. So they asked him again as he was writing. He then got up. He said to both the crowd and the Pharisees who were ready to stone the woman, he said, he among you that has not sinned cast the first stone. What ends up happening based off this logic? Well, people drop the stones and they walk away first. Then the Pharisees and the scribes walked away. So the woman then got up and he asked the woman, he said, woman, he says, where are the witnesses who have condemned you to death? He said, no one. And she responded to him. She said, no one has condemned me, Lord. She said, he responded and said, well, neither do I. Go and sin no more. Now, that's the entire passage in summarization of John chapter 8, verse 1 through 11. What about this in particular do I want to discuss? Well, a lot of people who look at that passage alone have often utilized that passage to say, well, this is why we should not be quick to judge people. This is why we shouldn't judge at all, because we're all at fault. We all make mistakes. We're all imperfect. We've all heard those typical sayings. You yourself have probably even said that, right? Which is fine. However, the problem with that understanding about you can't judge, or that we all, are imperfect. We all sin and all this stuff. So there's no need to throw stones. That's not actually what happened there, right? When he said that, there's a reason why he said it. And you might be saying, well, what do you mean? He did say he that hasn't sinned cast the first stone. Well, here's what I got to ask you guys. What does it mean to sin? Now, from the Christian perspective, it means to miss the mark. From going back as far as the ancient Hebrews, sin simply meant, and even the Bible even says it directly, to sin means to transgress the law. Sin is basically synonymous to someone committing a crime. So, in so many words, like in America, if you commit a crime and you're found guilty of it, you're considered a felon. In the Bible, in the biblical sense, if you commit a sin that goes against God's law, you're considered what's known as a sinner. Or in the book of Psalms, they call you a worker of iniquity, which is simply a more fancier way of calling you a sinner, right? That being said, when a person commits a sin, if any among them were were not at fault, are not at fault for anything that they've done wrong in this instance, then go ahead and cast the stone. A lot of them drop their stones. But here's the problem from a legal standpoint. Now, according to the book, and I want to read this to you all, because here's what I want to tell you. I'm a person that believes in the Old Testament. So I believe in going back to the old covenant to reference the renewed covenant, which is the New Testament, because a lot of the New Testament is merely a reiteration of the old one. Paul, or the Apostle Shaul will often call it a schoolmaster, something that you learn from. Going back and referencing it, this a lot of what you see that happens in the New Testament is merely a reiteration of the old one. So it's never straying too far away from it. So a lot of what you're seeing happening, it's the Old Testament playing out through Yeshua's eyes in the newest way, in a new way, to show people how to go about following and executing the intent behind the law, right? So this is the book, but I want y'all to get this passage in order to understand what's happening in the book of John, chapter 8, verses, what is it, 1 through 11? Yes, 1 through 11. This is the book of Deuteronomy, and we're just going to read a couple of verses, not the whole thing. This is the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 17, verses 5 through 7. It says, then shall you bring forth that man or that woman, which have committed that wicked thing unto your gate, even that man or that woman, and shall stone them with stones till they die. At the mouth of two witnesses or three, keep this in mind, verse 6. At the mouth of two witnesses or three witnesses shall he that is worthy of death be put to death. But at the mouth of one witness he shall not be put to death. Verse 7. The hands of the witnesses shall be first upon him to put him to death, and afterward the hands of all the people, So thou shalt put the evil away from among you. Now, that is the precedent that was set for anybody. Particularly, the topic was talking about an idolater. That's another one of the sins where you will be put to death for in Israelite law if you had committed idolatry. Adultery applies in this same reference, right? Because it also was a sin of severe degree. That if you were found having unfaithful copulation with this man, with a married man, you along with him shall be put to death. Now, going back to the book of I'm talking too fast, and that might be my ADHD kicking in too. Going back to the book of John, chapter 8, going back to that passage, in and of itself, when people look at that, they immediately assume that in this instance, Yeshua showed mercy because simply it was the Christian thing to do. But that's not at all what happened there. What we see in that passage is simply this. It was law, and it is a fact that according to the law of Moses, that if a woman and or man were found guilty of committing adultery, they shall surely be put to death via stones. As you saw in that passage, that's exactly what happened. But here's the key component. There's two key components that's missing in this situation. And I bet you a lot of people, not saying all of you, many of you may know this, some of you don't. For those of you that don't, I want you to think about this. I'm going to give you the answer regardless anyway. It's not like I'm actually talking to somebody at the moment. But hopefully soon, one day, I probably will not be able to present it to you in the same manner. Let's think about this. And this one key component, there's somebody missing in this whole situation. Actually, there's quite a few people missing. Who are those people missing in the situation with Jesus, the woman, the adulteress, the Pharisees, and the community of people that surrounds them? Who's missing? Well, for one, if you've noticed, the adulterer himself is missing. So the person that she had sex with, He's missing in the situation. Then there's the other component of the law that they also missed, the 2 to 3 witnesses, right? So that being said, in order for you to accuse somebody of a crime according to the law, 2 or 3 witnesses had to witness you actually do the crime. Hence why, if you go back into the passage, Yeshua asked, "Woman, where are those who have claimed to this that you committed adultery? Who's here to condemn you?" The woman responded to him and said, "Clearly nobody, Lord." And that's when he said, "Neither will I condemn you." And you know why? Because the 2 or 3 witnesses that were supposed to be there, they weren't there. So is this something that the Pharisees perhaps made up? Well, maybe not necessarily, but we can't execute something where if 2 or 3 people, if the Pharisees are just dragging somebody along and then they say this woman has committed adultery, yet no one has seen this woman actually do the crime, but they're claiming that this happened. Why am I going to then condemn someone where if the law says to the T that there must be 2 or 3 witnesses. 2 or 3 witnesses are not there. The adulterer, that the other sinner that committed the crime along with her, and he's not present. That's a problem. Go back. Okay, now go back in retrospect to this conversation about casting the first stone. If those people who are in similitude at fault, similar to this woman who may have committed adultery, or if you believe indeed that this woman has done this, and you're going to throw stones based off of the accusation. No witnesses, no adulterer, just the woman and just the Pharisees claiming that she did it, but yet nobody witnessed her do it. Go ahead and cast the first stone. And we just established that sin is the transgression of what? The law. The 10 Commandments, anything outside of the 10 Commandments that was established under Moshe, guess what? That's the law. That's the precedent. It had to have been broken. And if nobody has witnessed to this woman doing or committing wrong, then casting that stone would make them what by definition? It would make them sinners. So he that has not sinned, cast the first stone. It's plain and simple in this regard, ladies and gentlemen. The Pharisees were trying to trap Yeshua in this sense. But the problem is they were the ones that were going to be found sinful, because for as much as they were trying to trap him, and they've done this on occasion throughout the Bible, they've been trying to get this man caught up because they thought he was a liar. They called him a witch before the Roman courts. They've done all these different things. Why would this instance be any different? And if Yeshua would have executed the law of Moses, which he would have been right to do, had the woman, along with the 3 witnesses, had witnessed to her committing this sin before people, she would have been put to death. But because the Pharisees themselves, being masters of the law, instructors of the law, interpreters of the law, did not follow through with this to the T, guess what happened? They would have committed a transgression too in their judgment. Because the woman was present, but not her accomplice, not the person she was having sex with. Where is this married man? Then the 2, 3 witnesses, where are they? They're nowhere to be found in this instance. Now, a lot of people who, especially if you believe in the idiom about don't throw stones in glass houses, I would agree with that. But then here's the thing. That's not to say that if someone did commit a wrong, that if someone was found guilty of doing something according to the law had to be executed. But not only would the law have been executed upon the person that was being judged, it would have also been executed upon those who committed the judgment as well, because they would have been found wrong according to the law too. So Yeshua made it clear for both sides. There's mercy on this end, there's mercy on your end. Because guess what's going to happen if you do the judgment? You're going to be found accused of sin too, because you didn't follow through with what the law said. Hence, he that have not committed sin, cast the first stone. If you haven't committed any error in your judgment here, cast the first stone. If you haven't been found of no such crime, Cast the first stone. The one thing the Bible does not condemn is you being able to judge. What it does highly ill advise against is you judging hypocritically, judging wrongfully, judging without a lack of information, and not judging thoroughly according to what has been provided according to the law of Moses. Had they not followed through with it, they would have been found in sin too. Henceforth, they too should be put to death because they're wrongfully convicting a woman of something that nobody has gathered witnesses for. And so that in turn led to him then saying, where have you been found guilty of? Have these women condemned you? And he said, no one, Lord. And he said, then go and sin no more. Neither will I condemn you. But I'll leave it right there. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for listening if you got this far. Stay tuned until the next spiritual episode. And with this, I say peace.